Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Magnon. I work as the Outreach and Training Coordinator at the Louisiana Commission for the Deaf. And I'm so thrilled to have all of you here joining us today. The training we're going to address today is ADA and resources. And we're happy to have a special speaker, Mr. Paul Singleton, who will be explaining in depth and presenting on this topic. This training will be very beneficial to you. If you would like to have more information about Mr. Paul, reach out to us. And some of you who are interpreters would like to earn CEUs for this event, be sure to enter your name, your RID or BEI number, whichever certification we have, and we'll be able to send you the certificate as soon as you request from us. After I've ended this announcement, I'll go ahead and send the link for all you all to fill in your information, and then you'll obtain it by this Monday. For those of you who are not looking for CEUs, you can still print a certificate just for your own benefit, your personal benefit, or simply don't if you don't want to. Either way, thank you for coming, and I'm going to let Mr. Paul Singleton take it away. I hope you all can see me well. Okay, hello everyone. Good morning. I'm coming to you from Maryland, and I have been involved with the American with Disability Act, or the ADA, for many, many years now. Actually, even before its inception, and I'll tell you more about this a little bit. To begin, we're going to talk some housekeeping rules for the content of this training or duration of this training. Please make sure to keep your microphone muted and your videos off. The LCD staff will be monitoring the chat, and that will ensure that I can answer any questions during my presentation today. This presentation is being recorded, and the link will be shared with you later. There's a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen for captions, for real-time captioning, if you'd like to have that. If you have a smartphone, it'll be difficult to see the captioning in the training and be too small. So I strongly recommend using a laptop or a desktop. As it was mentioned, there will be certificates at the completion of this training that will be sent if you have requested, and the LCD staff will arrange that after the completion of the training. Okay. Table of contents, briefly. This training will take 2 hours, maybe possibly an hour and a half, depending on how it goes. And we're going to go over what you see on the screen right now. Accessibility laws. Second, we'll talk about an overview of the ADA and disability rights laws. There are so many other laws other than the ADA that apply to disabilities and to individuals with disabilities. Number 3, ADA resources. There are many of them at this time, and I'm going to share some with you later during the presentation. Another thing we'll discuss is the CVAA, the Communication and Video Accessibility Act. We'll talk about the FCC order for TRS compliance. TRS means Telecommunication Relay Service. In jails, mostly based in jail. We'll talk about the terms hearing impaired, how it is not appropriate for use. I'll expand more on that later. And we'll discuss the needs assessments support effective communication. After that, we have ADA tips for effective communication. Louisiana ADA resources that I'll share with you, and we'll end with a Q&A. Next slide. Let me give you a little bit of history on the ADA, or the American with Disability Act. Prior to 1990, because the ADA was passed back in 1990, so that is now about 34 years ago today. But prior to that date, Senator Tom Harkins, who was a senator from Iowa, a Democratic senator, and that gentleman happened to have a deaf brother. So he grew up immersed around ASL, around his brother. And as he joined politics, he realized that the need for technology, for improved technology, was there. Improve like relay service, the use of American Sign Language, and so forth. So what he did is he asked different disability groups to come up with a wish list, things that they would like to see change in the US. There was a group of deaf and hard of hearing individuals that met several times, and we came up with a list of 20 wishes. Things like captioning on airplanes, telephone compatible with hearing aids, video relay service. So we had a list of 20 different things that we wanted. There was another group composed of blind and low vision individuals who came up with their list. They had 20 different wishes as well, things that were accessible to them. And then we had people with physical disability who had 20 wishes when it came to wheelchair access. So all the groups sent that in to Senator Harkins, who looked them over, and he came back to us and he told us, all the groups, he said, it is not going to be possible to accomplish all these changes nationwide overnight. So he encouraged us to pick 2 priorities out of the 20. So the deaf group could choose 2, the low vision blind group had 2, and the groups with physical disability and needing wheelchair access picked 2. And that would give us a total of 5 titles of the ADA law. That way we wouldn't have 60 different components of the law. So that is the history of the ADA back in 1990. That is the inception of the American with Disability Act. And the reason for the ADA, well, in the United States, of course, citizens have to pay federal taxes. Federal, local, and state taxes of all kinds. It can be income taxes. It can be sales taxes, property taxes. Even when you go to the restaurant, you have to pay a tax, right? So everyone pays taxes at all sorts of levels. You encounter that in your daily life. And of course, people with disabilities will expect to receive services because they are paying into these taxes as well. So that is the basis for the ADA, or the reason why we have it. It is to ensure equal opportunities for everyday life when it comes to work, housing, property taxes, or whatever it may be. So that is the concept. It began with the concept of taxes that are being paid by all, meaning that the resources should be shared by all. Make sense? There's a great website for the ADA. It is ada.org. I'm sorry, .gov. That was the interpreter. ada.gov. We'll look at it a little bit later. Title I is related to employment and employers with 15 or more employees. Those employers are prohibited from discriminating. The EEOC is in charge of monitoring that, the Equal Opportunity Commission. ADA Title II is composed of two parts. We have the state and local government activities, things like education, employment, transportation, recreation, the justice system, voting. Those activities have to be accessible by individuals with disability, no matter whether they are deaf, blind, in a wheelchair, missing a limb, whatever it can be. They all must have an opportunity to enjoy all these activities. And this section or this title of the ADA is monitored by the Department of Justice or DOJ. We have Title II Public Transportation, the Department of Transportation is handling that. Then Title III is Public Accommodations. And this is for hotels, restaurants, retail stores, doctors' offices, zoos. Those are just a few examples. Basically, it's wherever people may gather, or anywhere people may purchase or use services or receive services, any sort of public entity. So that would be located under Title III of the ADA. Title IV is what we call TRS, the Telecommunication Relay Service. This is where the deaf and hard of hearing and deaf-blind can have access to telephone communication system within the US. Remember how I told you that deaf groups picked 2 wishes out of the list of 20? One of them was job discrimination or preventing job discrimination. And the second priority was the telecommunication service. So these two are represented in one in Title I and the other one in Title IV of the ADA. And of course, they came at the same time, they provide benefit also to other groups of disabilities. And those other groups also benefit from Title II and III. By the way, I just want to mention, if you have any questions, you're welcome to type them in the chat, and the LCD staff will monitor the chat and let me know if if I can address it at the moment or at the end of the presentation. I'll decide to do that at that point. So I mentioned that Title II has to do with the state and local government access, meaning that a person cannot be discriminated against based on disability, and that includes jails and prisons. Those locations must be accessible as well. The Department of Justice is responsible for handling Title II. Title III prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in the activities or place of public accommodation. And examples of that are listed there. And this is listed in the ADA. There are 12 categories, actually. We have restaurants, movie theaters, schools, daycare facilities, recreational facilities, and medical offices. This is monitored by the Department of Justice. Under Title IV, we have the Telecommunication Relay Service. And all the telephones in the US with all phone numbers going from all zeros to all 9, all of them pay a surcharge on a monthly basis. And this is paid to Universal Service Fund. That fund is what pays for interpreters, for special accessibility services, for telephone access. Since everyone pays the surcharge, that means that everyone can use the telephone. That is the concept behind it. We're talking about a functioning level equivalent. The FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, is in charge of that title.
One moment while we figure out interpreters. This is Paul. Okay, diving back in disability right laws other than the ADA. It will apply with individuals with disabilities. There is, again, the Telecommunication Act. That has to do with access to the telephone equipment itself. Handset devices, they need to be Bluetooth compatible and that sort of access, specifically for telecommunication equipment. That could be iPhones, Androids, all of those devices are under that act to make sure that those devices are accessible. Right now, we are seeing live captioning on iPhones as well as Android devices now because of this specifically act. There's also the Fair Housing Act that is in regards to HUD and the housing of urban development. And then there is also the Air Carrier Access Act that is in regards to air transportation, managed by the Department of Transportation. Interesting thing, last week I did fly on United Airlines, and I want to say about half of their movies were captioned, and I did feel like that wasn't right, so I did file a grievance, a complaint to United 3 different times, and they gave me $150 to compensate me for that. They said, "Oh, here's $150 to accommodate you. We're planning on adding captions at a later date." But right now, all of their movies are finally all captioned. I have not yet gone on a flight since then, but I am looking forward to it. It's interesting though, because Southwest Airlines, when I flew with them, I want to say maybe for the past 8 years, all of their movies already had captions. And so there really is no excuse for other airlines to not have the same functionality. And so that is Air Carrier Access Act. Moving on to the next one, Voting Accessibility for the Elderly and Handicapped Act. That's in regards to accessible polling places, making sure that individuals with disabilities have the opportunity to vote and cast their vote. Some individuals cannot physically go to the polling location and they have to vote from their home or remotely. And so they will send their ballots in via post mail. The next one, National Voter Registration Act, that promotes registration rates. So, for example, when you are going to go to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle, specifically when you go there to register, you can get registered to vote there. And it's typically you get registered to vote automatically because you are doing that at the same times when you get your driver's license or your picture ID card. And then so that is an opportunity for individuals who are able to register to vote, but having that opportunity available to all individuals who may or may not be able to physically go into that facility. So that is what that is. And then that was under the Department of Justice. So they do monitor and make sure that everyone is following that. There's also Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act that includes prisons, nursing homes, juvenile detention centers, and the like. They all need to have the rights as well for to get very specific services. For example, treatment and counseling and having access to interpreters or Braille devices or Braille readers, and them having the choice of what specific forms that they need for readability. Then there is the Rehab Act that's similar to the ADA, but it's specifically for the federal government. Now, the ADA does not apply or does not address federal government. So this specifically would be for states and local government, and that's all. So the Rehab Act makes sure that the federal government has to follow the same requirements as the ADA provides services and accessibility, the same concept as for the federal government. Then there's the Architectural Barriers Act. That's by the ATBCB. That's the board that's responsible for making sure that, for example, bathrooms in public facilities, they're 58 inches wide for the door. So that way individuals are, and then also push to open. And they have several different standards that they've created to make sure that businesses are meeting those standards or providing more than, so individuals with disabilities can have access to all places. That's the general concept, but the builders themselves or the architects themselves, without having that standard, they wouldn't know how wide to make the bathroom stalls for a variety of folks. So that is where those standards come in. And again, ATBCB is who organizes it. They do have a lawyer that is not under the ADA, but you can also take time yourself and look into all of these different resources if you are interested in a specific area that we've mentioned. Okay, I do know that a lot of us know about deaf and hard of hearing people, but really quickly, I want to give us all a refresher. ASL is a native language for 500,000 deaf or hard of hearing individuals. The key word there is native, not including individuals who learned ASL later in life or hearing people who know ASL. It does not include those folks, but it includes native speakers or users, 500,000. And ASL is actually the third most used language in the United States after both English and Spanish. And that is why the Federal Communication Commission, FCC, does offer VRS in those three different languages currently, English, ASL, and Spanish. And not all deaf or hard of hearing individuals are alike. Each person has different hearing levels or communication modes. There's approximately 47 million deaf and hard of hearing individuals in the US. I would say about 1% of all of the US is deaf and uses ASL. 10% of all of US population has some sort of hearing loss, whether that is because of old age, when you lose your hearing, or maybe it's from loud exposure and injuries to your ear in the workplace or loud music, and that damaged some hair cells in your ear, but a total about 47 million. And that is a lot. 350 million is the current US population as a whole. So 47 million, I want to say about close to 50 million. So that is a lot of individuals that have those unique needs. Okay, the FCC is responsible for providing services under the ADA, so deaf and hard of hearing individuals can use the telephone. An example of this is on the slide here. For example, caption telephone services, internet protocol caption telephone services, and all of the other items on here. I will show more slides with pictures going into depth with each of these 6 different items. Okay, the first one, caption telephone. What it does is it's an analog system, so it has to be connected to a hard line, just like back in my day when I was younger. So this one, what if you can look on here? There's also this one that is a caption telephone that specifically uses internet rather than using a phone line. And this is called the Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service. And you'll still see the screen here that individuals are able to read that, and whether or not they want to have the volume up or down while they're holding on to the phone. Hard of hearing individuals typically use this product quite a lot. This is a similar product. It's also an internet protocol, but this is a relay service and it's web-based. So for example, you can use Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, and those several different types of browsers that you're able to use, and VRS services or caption telephones specifically through these web-based platforms. That could be accessed on a laptop, on a computer PC, and it's really where that service is coming from. It's from a browser or web-based. The FCC is also responsible for making sure that there is speech-to-speech relay services. For example, if an individual has cerebral palsy, or maybe they have damage to their jaw and they're unable to use spoken language, then they might have a special service that they use called speech-to-speech relay service. Even individuals who use communication boards, like the one that is pictured on this slide, they click, for example, a picture that says in pain, turn the lights off, sleep. Using those communication boards, they are able to use speech to speech. Those relay operators then take in the message, whether it's at a really slow pace. So then it'll say, for example, mom, dinner, 5 o'clock tomorrow. That the operator would then transmit that message to the other person on the line. Speech to speech also does have a really unique system in place for each specific state. Each state does have their own 800 number that you can then, or 866 number. You can see Alabama right here. They have an English and Spanish line. You could see Alaska here. So what you have to do is you have to dial those numbers first, and then the operator will come on the line and connect you to the person that you are wanting to speak to at the endpoint and facilitate that communication. You can see that also they have examples on here. It says ALS, Parkinson's disease, stuttering, MD, stroke, and the like. There are a lot of different individuals that have different diagnoses that use this unique service. And so they are able to use that relay service as well. TTYs, I'm surprised it's still around. About 20 years ago, I tossed mine out, and it's a really old and lousy technology. And now I use ASL, and this you're having to type in English all of the time, so it is really outdated. And really only 1% of all relay services is actually TTY relay services. 99% use the newer technology that has since come out, using their computer, their web, using their phone, cell phone that has the different capabilities on it nowadays. So the use of TTY is going out, or is going down, and I would not be surprised if it would be obsolete coming up soon. Yep, TRS has started to migrate away from older TTY technology. Yep, like I was saying. Some individuals, though, are very much wanting to use their TTY on their phone line, and especially in, for example, rural areas, they have been so used to using that device, and they have a right to use it too. So the FCC did register, or the Federal Register under FCC, they did transition from TTY to real-time text technology. And so all phone centers, for example, 911 call centers, if they have real-time text technology, like for example, the iPhone, you're able to text with friends, family. You're also able to dial 911 via text. So you can call them to 911, and but however, it would be communicated via text. So there is one city, maybe or a county, that does have a very upgraded system to be able to have real-time text technology. And then they would be able to waive the requirement of having a TTY if they are able to do real-time text technology. So that means that you have to make sure that you have the quality and you have that technology in order to migrate from TTY to real-time text. And it's a slow process. It's definitely slower than expected. That was posted in 2017. It's now 2024, and more individuals are using real-time text technology too, and less of TTYs. I would not, and soon enough, I'm sure it would be outdated technology.
There's a question in the chat that says, and the chat says, is anybody familiar with Access SOS? I'm personally not familiar with that service, so I'm not going to include more access besides, a 911 emergency call. This is not what my presentation is about today, so I'm not going to touch on that today, but it's something that y'all can research and Google it up on your own time. Go back to VRS, Video Relay Service, focusing on ASL. The qualified process to receive to receive the information, of course, to count in ASL for the person has to use American Sign Language, because we use a sign language interpreter with video service, with video relay service. 21st Century Communication and Video Accessibility Act. At the bottom of the column, it says the National Deaf Blind Equipment Distribution Program. They have various providers all over the US who provide equipment to individuals who are deaf and blind or low vision and deaf. $10 million a year are covered by the ADA to provide these resources. Anyway, go back to that column on the left. We have television and set-top box controls, menus and program guides. I'll tell you something surprising. About a year ago or so, Samsung, on their new television, because they make televisions, they have American Sign Language as an option in the guide. Whenever you look at the guide for the television on how to turn on and turn off the television, how to turn on and turn off the text, you can actually make a selection to have the instructions given in American Sign Language. That way, you'll be able to have full accessibility to turn your television on and use it. Of course, it seems to be an avatar. It's not a real person, but apparently it works well. And so we see a lot of progress. So this is what the CVAA is doing. They ensure that people have full access. There are also audio descriptions for blind people. About 25% must have audio descriptions now. As time goes by, the aim is to reach 100%. Closed captioning of internet video program. Now, it used to be that broadcast television, just regular television, had to have caption. And at the time, it didn't apply to internet-based program. So think of Netflix. Netflix have a variety of TV shows. Since they're not being broadcasted on regular television, they didn't have to have captions. However, now internet video programs are required to have captions. So there's so many things going on right now for the betterment and improvements of accessibility. Before we dive a little bit further in that, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about a website that I think would be beneficial to you all. Hold for just a second, please. Here's the website, www.fcc.gov. This is where you can have an entire website on discussing relay services. I'm showing you the list. You have the 6 blue lines right here: caption telephone service, Internet Protocol caption service, Internet Protocol relay service, speech-to-speech, TTY relay service, video relay service. So 6 services available under the American with Disability Act. And that benefits a lot of people. This is amazing. The services are free, absolutely no cost. And that is provided by the surcharge on the phone bill that everyone pays. And this allows deaf people to call hearing people too. Hearing people can call deaf people. It's wonderful. Okay, moving on. If you hold for me just a moment, I'm searching for the state of Louisiana. Here's the number, 888-272-5530. All right. If you bear with me. My suggestion to you is to email the following address: accessinfo@fcc.gov. By emailing the address I just gave you, you can subscribe to announcements as far as new policies, new programs, and other information that comes out. Just recently, on March 14th, I received an email from that subscription list. And let me tell you, it was a big deal. Here's what they announced. You can see the email right now on the screen. They have a 5-year, that's what I'm highlighting right now on the screen. So what the FCC is going to do is look at a new program for deafblind people. Because deafblind people have been complaining a lot that the equipment is not sufficient for them. Since the service is based on American Sign Language, and those people need tactile sign language. So they actually need a tactile interpreter to be able to use VRS, and it's not a good accommodation for them. So now they're going to look into that, and also see what I just highlighted. The FCC is going to look into the use of certified deaf interpreters, and they will compensate for special services or specialized services. Also, they're looking at scale-based interpreters. For example, perhaps a scientist who's working in a lab needs to have an interpreter familiar with a specific set of vocabularies that applies to that scientific field, and they have to be able to use the correct terms. If any video interpreter comes on the line, several of them may not be familiar with the terminology used in that field. So how can they interpret appropriately? The goal is for the deaf person to be able to request an interpreter familiar with a specific field that applies to my call. It is due on April, the comments are due by April 15th, and the FCC is going to reply by the 29th. So what I suggest, what I recommend to you all in Louisiana, you all have deaf-blind people in Louisiana, they should go ahead and contact the FCC, share information, share the needs that you have, what type of interpreters you need, what type of skills you have, skill-based interpreting, whatever it is about either topic. So it has to be a bigger deal than just providing VRS. We need to have interpreters proficient in specific fields. And that way, a deaf person will sound smarter on the phone. They won't sound like they do now using an interpreter who's not familiar with the proper vocabulary and terminology. Okay, I shifted a little bit. We're going back to the topic of the ADA. I went off on a tangent for a little while. Here's the website right here. The website ada.gov or www.ada.gov. This is a great website. And you see different topics at the top. You see topics, resources, laws, regulations, and standards, enforcement. And then on that ribbon, you see file a complaint. So if we go under topics, effective communication. And we have service animals. So there's information right there. It's very easy to find. Under resource and materials, here's where you can find all sorts of information. It can be regarding parking, hotels, testing accommodations. See the different topics here? Effective communication is one. So you can go down the list. You have a variety of topics. And it's something for you to read over and educate yourself a little bit more on the various types of settings. Under enforcement, let's go look at enforcement now. There are ways to find cases that can be used, that can apply. Let me find something for you. So the Maryland Department of Human Services, and also there's a lawsuit against the LA County about accessibility, voting accessibility. So you can see different types of lawsuits that have happened in recent years. I'm going to let the interpreter switch before we continue.
Okay. So, filing a complaint, they have several different places that you can go online and file that complaint. They have an employment category that you are able to go to EEOC to file a complaint there. They also have air travel where you're able to go and file a complaint there. So there's several different locations that you can submit your grievance. Typically, the response time is roughly about 3 months in order for them to get back to individuals who did file that grievance. First, what they try to do is have a mediation. So they attempt to resolve the issue at hand. That's typically the first step in their case, and they do go through a step-by-step process, especially if it's definitely leads to something more serious, like a lawsuit, for example, in that case that we saw about LA County. And if 3 months go by and you don't hear anything, they do have a phone number right here that you can call. I'm highlighting that now, that 800 number. And yeah, they do have a process that they do go through that you can also look into. Okay. And so now there is several different websites, and then I will show you all of the websites, and then after the website, we'll go back to sharing the PowerPoint that I have for today. So the ADA, ADATA.org, that website is the national network that serves individuals nationally. It has several different information and trainings and everything in regards to the ADA. They have several different resources where you can really enrich your learning and take advantage of all of the different trainings that they have. So, I suggest really feel free to take advantage of that website. Again, adata.org. And the national network, they do also have a conference. And this upcoming conference will be June 6th to the 9th, and that will be in Minneapolis this year, Minnesota. There's several different resources, as you can see here, as I'm going through them. And the like. Again, it is a really good resource. I suggest you check it out on your free time. And so now for individuals here that are in the community, if you are needing some sort of, like, for example, form or paperwork or some sort of information, you can show maybe to example for schools or cinema theaters. A good resource to have on hand is NAD, the National Association for the Deaf. I will show you their website now. And then you can go under the resources tab. As you can see, they have several different types of resources. One of them is what's called an advocacy letter. I will show you that now. And the website is www.n as in Nancy, a d as in dog.org. So let me show you one, for example. Let's do healthcare. And if you are needing to, for example, go to a doctor and that doctor's office does not want to provide an interpreter, you can then use this specific letter that NAD already has to present to them. So you'll click on where it says print and share this letter. And they do have a lawyer, they have ACA, Medicaid, Medicare. They have several different references that they are using for addressing concerns in the healthcare field or arena. I did lose the website, so one moment while I get that pulled back up. One moment. Okay. So this list right here that you're seeing from education all the way to relay service has several different different areas in which you can ask for those letters. And there are a total of 12 categories, and they all do mention the ADA law itself in those letters. So you are able to look at those, and it does address most of the potential situations that are out there that you might run into. It's not perfect, but it is helpful for the folks that are in the community to then present to these sorts of facilities and have this advocacy letter. So that way they know, for example, for your medical appointment, they need to provide an interpreter. And it does help a lot by having that plan ahead of time and being able to inform the medical facility that they have to provide a sign language interpreter, and not on the same day of your appointment, because of course it will be hard to find a sign language interpreter the same day. So making sure that you have this advocacy letter and presenting it ahead of time is really beneficial. They also have something for like local school districts. Under the education tab, you are able to show that advocacy letter, so they are also aware of the different requirements that they have. Again, you just have to click on print and share this letter, and then you can print it if you wanted to as a paper copy or as a PDF, and you're able to send it to friends, family members, or all those you think that will benefit from it. Okay, going back to the PowerPoint now. And if you do have any complaints, hold on one moment. Okay, if you have any sort of disputes or grievances or complaints for specifically not being able to have access to communication, there is a process for that, and I will show you that here. So on this slide, you are able to check this website. It's fcc.gov, and they do have a dispute assistance access to communication process where you can file your grievance there. Deaf-blind resources, they have resources there. One of the questions that I did receive earlier this week was regards to deaf-blind individuals and resources that are available specifically looking at deaf-blind individuals. Maryland, this is a resource from Maryland. I'm sure that Louisiana has a similar resources available. Then it also talks about SSPs, support service providers. And then you can also look at I Can Connect as well in your local state. If you know individuals who are maybe low vision, deaf blind, they have equipment, for example, for telecommunication services, your provider, you would then look at I Can Connect, ICANCONNECT, I Can Connect. FCC also recently had an order that was placed last year. So that way all jails and prisons would be required to provide TRS and relay services. That was effective as of this year on December 31st, or by December 31st of this year, they have to be able to prove that they are compliant, and they are offering all 6 different relay services to all of the inmates that are in different facilities. And Louisiana, they also have to provide that in all the different parishes or county jails and prisons as well, because that is something that you need to make sure that you're doing now, so that way you're meeting all of those 6 different relay services. In the blue that I highlighted right here, it says inmate calling services providers must provide access to all relay services. If broadband is available in jurisdiction with 50 or more inmates. And so most typically house more than 50 inmates. Some do have a really small location. And so if you do have broadband, then there's not necessarily a requirement. But if you do, or if your facility has more than 50, then it's definitely a no-brainer. And so now we'll be talking about reasonable accommodations a little bit. Reasonable accommodations have to be tailored to an individual's specific disability and capabilities. It varies widely among deaf and hard of hearing and deaf-blind people. And grouping deaf or hard of hearing to quote unquote called hearing impaired category is not a best practice. It is absolutely not. So if you see on the FCC's website, they provided 6 different services, right? Those 6 that we did mention. It's at no cost to the deaf and hard of hearing individuals, deaf and hard of hearing and deaf-blind individuals. And each one of those services are different. So a hard of hearing individual who doesn't know sign language, they should not be using video relay service, because that requires you to know American Sign Language. A captioned telephone would be a better fit for a hard of hearing person. And so making sure that, and then having the one label, the one category of hearing impaired is not helpful. It becomes more of a barrier because you're not able to align a specific individual to a specific service that they may need. And that will enable effective communication abilities, and by having several different groups and identities and making sure that those services are in compliance or align with that individual and their needs under the ADA. Needs assessment and solutions, that will definitely help identify individuals. For example, a hard of hearing person, if they can speak or know some ASL, then they're able to use specific services. There's hearing aid compatible telephones, amplified headsets, volume control, captioned telephone, and the like. For deaf individuals who don't hear, and they use ASL, they can use ASL interpreters, TTY relay, or video relay service. So basically, the point is here, and then deaf blind, ASL tactile interpreters, TTY relay with Braille devices, and several different other services. So now looking at this is the point that I wanted to bring up. It is really important that you do ask the deaf person, deaf blind person, or deaf low vision individual, or hard of hearing individual. There's a variety of individuals, and it's really important that we do ask them what they're needing. Okay, we're switching interpreters now.
And we're ready to keep going. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone. So again, the point is, public places have a responsibility to make the proper accommodation and to identify who the deaf person is, what their requirement, what their needs is. So they're required to ask the person what they need. That is the requirement for public places. They need to provide reasonable accommodations depending on the individual's need for effective communication. I'll tell you a story that happened a couple weeks ago. I went to Arlington, a county. It's a lovely place right across the Potomac River where I live. So like I mentioned, I'm in the state of Maryland, and it's right there across the border in Virginia. So Arlington County has got this big, beautiful complex. It houses the fire department, the police department, the water department, the bus service. All of this is located in one complex, one location. They also have a theater right in the same complex. It seems to be apparently cost effective for them to gather all the services together in one location. So I wanted to go attend a play. It was called Private Jones. It's a brand new play that they were doing. It was advertised, and looking at the advertisement, it was mentioned that the play would be on for every day for a period of 2 months. Now, there were 4 dates where ASL interpreters were going to be provided, and 6 dates that had captioning for hard of hearing people. That way a person could pick and choose which was best for them. I thought it was great. So last week I got to sit and enjoy the entire show. There was a group of 20 of us, 20 deaf people in the audience. And we were located where we were able to see the interpreter clearly. There were 3 sign language interpreters that took turns during the performance, during the 2-hour performance. I just loved it. Captions were also available at the time. And there even had 3 deaf actors as part of the play on the stage performing. And that way there was interpretation done from ASL to English for the hearing people, the non-signing in the audience. So interpretation was going into two direction. The point is, heads up is up to the county, because they really did what they could to meet the needs of the deaf and hard of hearing in the community. And they understood that there were various needs. It was clear, it was perfect. There were choices given. And during a 2-month period, there was an equal opportunity for all to come and enjoy it. So that's the concept. That's the concept that should be applied nationwide. And all Louisianians also should have access to that. So what do we do now at this point? We no longer use the term hearing impaired. Let's ban it from our vocabulary. And I do understand that Louisiana has passed a law that prohibits the use of the term hearing impaired at state level. So they must use the term deaf, deafblind, low vision, or hard of hearing, or non-ASL user or ASL user. It's also important to match up with EDA resources and provided by the FCC or the relay service right now, because they all have to be provided, right, for the various services that you may have. A person may need one of the TRS services, or 2, or maybe one person uses 3, depending on their personal needs. It's also crucial to create protocols for easy access for obtaining services. In my example that I just mentioned, Arlington County, they had the information clearly posted on their website. It mentioned ASL, it mentioned captioning in big letters. It was bold. It was easy for me to see. I just clicked the service that I requested. It was right there. And it provided easy access. If there was no information on the website, it would have been difficult. You know, we know that it says that Private Jones, the play was going to, let's just say it just said Private Jones for the next 2 months, but with no accessibility information, it would not have been effective, would not have been accessible for me to get it. But here they had easy access to protocols. They already created for us to get the services and to meet the different needs of the various groups. So we need the solution to be already in place and accessible. The ADA coordinator must be involved in the training, in training people related to providing easy access protocol. That's the key right there, an easy access protocol. Unfortunately, a lot of ADA coordinators don't know what to do with deaf individuals, but they know what to do, how to provide for people with wheelchairs. And that's not proper. They need to provide the full range of services used by people who benefit from the American with Disability Act. I have showed you the website, ada.gov. Here it is one more time. The ADA National Information Line is there. The ADA has quick tips. It's something they haven't covered yet. You see that there's a printer PDF version, printer-friendly PDF version, a large print. You see the blue links. You can select the one that you want. And whenever, let's say you're going to a restaurant or a hotel, or perhaps a theater, medical offices, pharmacy, retail store, museum, library, parks, private school, and daycare center. If you need to provide information in those types of settings, go ahead and print the PDF as far as receiving sign language interpreters. If a location refuses to provide this service, you have the right to use this. Those are fact sheets that can be used by you, and it's very helpful. On ada.gov, there's a page for effective communication, and it has examples of what can be used. So we see American Sign Language interpreters, video remote interpreting, note takers, large print material. Video remote interpreting is an interpreter online. You can get it immediately without having to have a person physically enter the location or get on site and physically interpret. So VRI, video remote interpreter, is effective, but not always. It's not always the appropriate accommodation. There are times where you need to have an interpreter in person, and it depends. But it can help whenever there's a shortage of interpreter. VRI can be a resource. And VRI can be shared by multiple locations. So interpreters can be centralized in one location instead of physically going to different places, to different sites, which can take a lot of time. You can have the video remote interpreters available for multiple places, even though the interpreters are all at the same place. So technology is changing. We're having more of that nowadays than in-person interpreters. You know, now we have Zoom for meetings, we have Teams, other programs like that for meetings, and it's the same concept. Note takers is another access, large print material, captioning, accessible electronic and information technology. So those are just a few examples. I believe I've covered this website as well. We have advocacy letter on the NAD website. One of the questions that I was asked this week is, how many numbers of employees? You know, we hear the magic number of 15 employees mentioned by the ADA. meaning that it's a business that's large enough and they're able to afford reasonable accommodations. They should be able to afford, because of the size of their business, they're big enough. And the threshold is set at 15 employees. So that is the number used by the EEOC. How do you make the determination whether a business, let's say a restaurant, has 15 employees or more, if they meet that requirement? Give me just a moment. So a worker, as it says here, can be considered an employee if he or she has worked for the employer for at least 20 calendar weeks. So that's how you count it. If a business has, let's say, 5 locations, and each location has 2 to 3, perhaps 10, 4 employees, the different numbers of employees. But if it makes a total of 20 employees, then they meet that threshold. The 15 employees are not required to be in one location. It applies to larger businesses as well if they have a total of 15 employees or more, no matter the location. Today, more and more employees work from home. And fortunately, it's not a way to avoid that law. It's the total number of employees that count, whether they work on location or from home. The company can be required by the ADA law to provide reasonable accommodations and to not be allowed to discriminate on the job. Okay, next. If you feel like you're experiencing this discrimination on the job, you are not being provided reasonable accommodation, you're not being provided necessary access, either at your workplace, and you want to file an EEOC complaint. Here's a map of the district. Louisiana and East Texas are considered under the Houston office. So this is where you would go to file your complaint. The Houston office for anywhere within the state of Louisiana. I checked your website as far as Louisiana, and I did some research, and frankly, I was impressed. Your governor's office, your governor, Jeff Landry, has right on his front page a place where you can go and hit disability access resources. That's incredible. This is what we called easy access protocol. So disability affairs services, resources right there on the front page, disability affairs resources. And that there's a link there to the ADA coordinator. That way the person is clearly identified. The state ADA coordinator is named. And from there, you can click to get more information. So this is information that I've gathered from the ADA office there in Louisiana. So this is from your website. And here we have identified every single ADA coordinator in the state. I think that there's a total of about 150 listed here. You see the person's name. For example, you see Delgado Community College right there at the top. And the name is Joseph Williams. And then you have the disability office coordinator, service coordinator, his email, his phone number, all right there. This is what we call easy access protocol. Rather than having information that's lost, hard to find, and requires a lot of research and cause a lot of frustration for the person with disabilities. Whenever you want to find information, you want to find it quickly. Whenever you need the service, you need it now. So we know that time is of the essence. I'll tell you, this is amazing. I applaud the state of Louisiana for this. Disability Rights Louisiana is there to assist anyone in the community who are experiencing frustrations, difficulties, inability to receive proper services. If you want to have legal advice, they have ADA cases. See if your case applies or would be a case under the ADA. You can go to Disability Rights Louisiana. Here's their website listed. And they have resources within the Louisiana system to be able to assist and work things out. This is what I mentioned earlier. Let me just check just a moment. Oh, I need to do a poll. So if you can please, LCD staff, bring out the poll. I have 3 questions to ask you all to make sure that, well, just to get a sense of what you learned from this presentation. And I'll go ahead and give you a moment to please answer your questions. So take a moment and select the answers.
Okay, I'm seeing 7 people responding so far. Come on, type in your answers. The first question, it says, is the label hearing impaired a best practice for effective communication? The second question, does ADA Title III public accommodations cover doctor's offices? And the third question, let me see here. Does Louisiana have ADA coordinators for all its state agencies? Okay, I see first question, 50%, or excuse me, 90% responds no. Second question, 82% says yes. And third question, 82% says yes. Thank you. That's really good. Okay, so now moving on to the next part. Okay, it looks like we had 23 of you vote on that, so that's good. Okay, so I am now opening up the chat for questions. Please type your questions in the chat and then I will respond to them. And then also we have a couple of questions that I've received this week during the presentation that I have done 3 times. Today is the 3rd presentation that I've given. The first and second, I collected some questions. The first one was streaming text and or live captions. So for example, on iPhones, right now they do have live captioning services for anything that uses audio on your device. And so what it does is automatically uses speech recognition systems. And so that way it'll auto caption everything for you. And then they also have Google Google was the first one that actually established live captioning services, I believe about a year and a half ago. And Apple has, arrived late to the game. Currently, they are in their beta testing period, but that should launch relatively soon. It seems as though that they're still struggling with a couple of different incorrect captioning. And then Google does have a really high percentage of accuracy, so I'm sure Apple will catch up here shortly. The Chrome browsers, they actually have captioning as well. So if you were to open up Chrome or Microsoft Edge and several different browsers like that, some do have live captioning services, specifically Google does, and you are able to turn those on via your settings function. So once you click settings, you'll go down to where it says accessibility. And then once you click on that, you'll see the option for live captioning and you'll be able to turn those on. And any screen that has any sort of audio from that screen, anything that you're seeing on your browser that has audio will be captioned. Like whether or not that is you're looking at a website that shows the news, the weather, a football game, or what have you, it will auto caption that on the browser itself, which is an amazing technology. Also, the theaters and performance events. I did. I was one of 3 individuals that did end up suing the Redskins Washington football team because I was a season pass holder and for really at that time it was 17 years straight. And I want to say maybe in 2006, that was the 5th year, there we decided to sue for full access because individuals typically at these football games will do the announcements, the quarterbacks in the right wing about to pass 8 yards, they're on their second down, they have 2 yards to go, or those sorts of announcements I didn't have access to. So all I can do is watch the game while people around me had access to that. And so that stadium, it was FedEx Stadium. And so 3 of us, we did sue and we ended up winning. And what they ended up doing is the owner of the Washington Redskins at the time and FedEx Stadium, they did install 2 different ribbons on the 50-yard line on both sides of the stadiums. So if you look at the 50-yard lines go up and at like eye level, roughly, they would have a ribbon that has captioning that is visible during the game, announcing or saying what the announcers are saying. So I am able to see, oh, currently it's third down, penalty, or they'll say why there's a penalty because there's pass interference, or those sorts of different terminology that I want to have access to. I mean, yes, I can see that happen on the field, right? I saw the player grab the other one. So, but it's just that individuals are able to hear a lot of more information than I was able to see, and having that captioning services there was very beneficial. And then the NAD, they have soon, I believe they will come out with more in-depth resources for theater accessibility. So I do look forward for that information coming out. I see lack of in-person interpreters. Lack of in-person interpreters in the Southwest Louisiana area. Yep, that is a challenge. We are needing more interpreters. Really, there's a shortage of interpreters, and there's several different ways that you can still have access to it. You can use VRI or borrow sign language interpreters from Texas, the Houston area, for that Southwest Louisiana area, but that is something that we do need to look at because deaf folks do live there, right? In Southwest Louisiana. So they need access as well. Moving on, TTY being outdated. That was a question that came up, which I did bring that up earlier in my presentation today. Less than 1% of TRS is related to TTY, meaning that it is becoming obsolete. Assistive listening devices, There was a question that came in. I'm not very well versed in it, but I do know that there's a website out there, www.hearingloss.org, that has a plethora of different resources on several different listening device recommendations, suggestions, and you can look at that website and figure out what works best for yourself or the people that you're working with. University or alternative textbooks. That was a question that came up. My daughter works for the University of Maryland, the library that they have there in the library system. And so what she does is she captions all of the old videos that the library has, captions them, and then also provides advice on, for example, like paying for author royalties and paying for individuals that want, or how to pay for individual or copies that individuals want. Right now, everything is digital. And so when you have a hard copy, it's easier to track some of those things. And so now the rules are changing now because everything is transitioning to a digital format and a digital world. So my daughter is involved in the digital accessibility field, which is becoming more increasingly important as we are shifting more towards digital technology. And however, there are older technologies or older books and stuff that need to either be done away with or become accessible, for example, textbooks or captioning old videos, for example. And so my daughter heavily is in that. She has a master's degree in digital accessibility in library systems. And so that is just one example, example of what other colleges and universities can try to replicate in their own facilities. Okay. Anybody have any questions out there? You want to type your questions in the chat? I am happy to answer any questions. Okay, I'm seeing one for concealed gun classes, driving classes, and funeral homes. Are they required to provide an interpreting service? The answer to that is yes. So, what you'll use, there is a letter that you're able to show to. My brother lives in Texas and does have a concealed gun license, and he is required to go to class in order to get that permit. And there's a lot of rules in regards to concealed guns, and how you can have that, how you address conflicts. What if a person enters your property, and they are unarmed? What if they are armed? There's several different laws or surrounding that. And my brother had to go to 3 different trainings, 2 hours each with an interpreter and that was required. There is absolutely no ability to go through that without an interpreter because of all of the information being so imperative to learn. And driving classes, funeral homes as well, yes. You can also use that specific letter to help with that. I see. Are there more questions coming in?
It's really been fun being with you all. Oh, I do see one new question. Will ADA cover private apartments or private homes? Okay, it depends what it is for. Let me explain. The question is not really clear. I just have to understand what the purpose is, because the ADA will apply everywhere, of course, everywhere. But what is the purpose? What is it for? Is it in my own personal home for my own business where I'm profiting? It's not the same as, the county sending someone to your home to investigate or to your electrical design or inspect your electrical design. So whenever it's necessary to have communication with them, it may apply. Sometimes somebody may show up unexpected to your house and you might need to find a way to communicate via writing. It's better than nothing. But it would be best, of course, if they came accompanied with an interpreter or have access to VRI or have access to other types of ways that could be planned in advance. That would obviously be better. When something is last minute, it can be difficult, can be challenging. So what if the office is in a private residence? Is that also included? Yes. Anywhere, no matter the location. That is a really good question. Very good question. And it has to be investigated a little bit further. I would Google it to get more specifications and more details regarding to daycare centers. Daycare centers at a private residence. Are they exempt from ADA requirement? No, they're not exempt because they are a public place. People are coming to that location to get services. People are paying for services. So they should have, a person should have access to communication. When it comes to employment is different. For employees, the business has to have 15 or more employees to provide accommodations to an employee. But as far as a public place, there's no minimum. There's no minimum of 15. Public places have to be accessible to all. Let me move on further to more questions. Should I ask the NAD to write a new advocacy letter if the situation is not listed? You can contact their law center, NAD's law center. Just let them know that you need information about some sort of special situation that you may be encountering. They may already have information possibly that it can provide you, that some of them will be on a list and could apply from the list. It could, if it's related to one of the 12 categories under the ADA law, those are the most common topics, the most common situations that are encountered. That's what is listed currently. But don't hesitate to call their the ADA law, NAD law center. They may or may not have it, but just mention that it is a need. You need some kind of document, some advocacy letter. It's not going to hurt to ask. Somebody said, where's the letter again? Okay, so here's the website. It is nad.org. And once there, hit resources, go down the list to advocacy letters. Do court provide interpreters for deaf parents who have kids that go to court if the kid is over 18 years old? If I understand correctly, anyone who is over the age of 18 is not required to have their parents present in court. So, because at that age, that person is considered an adult. So that is the key difference. Whenever it's a minor, then the parents are still responsible for that minor, and they will obtain service, or they should obtain service. When it's over 18 years old, they may depend on the 18-year-old, the person who maybe consider themselves an adult, they don't want their parents to be involved. One person said, Washington football game would have enjoyed interpreting for you, man. Would have to sit with me and interpret for me. That's great. Funny. The Washington Redskins have been on a losing streak, so I don't know if you really want to come with me. Next question is, sometimes driving schools tend to use old videos during their classes, though are they still required to provide accessibility or accessible videos? I mean, that's a good question. If there are interpreters there who are able to interpret the video, then it becomes accessible. If they update the video, possibly they might update it depending on new rules and new laws. If there's an increase of 55 miles an hour up to 65 miles an hour and things change, then probably that will prompt people to create new videos. But until then, if interpreters are present, well, you know, the interpreter can interpret the video, and that would also be considered accessible, but it's a little bit sticky. Are they required to update and create new videos? It's a good question. If a deaf employee works as a teacher and they hold an IEP meeting, should they have the right to choose their interpreter? Some local districts require that the deaf employee use only the interpreters within the school district. If the deaf employee is not satisfied with the service provided, how can they advocate for getting an interpreter from an outside agency? As far as getting an interpreter from an outside agency, that's difficult to answer because they are providing interpreting. Now, a person can give feedback to the school district related to the effectiveness of the communication. A person can mention to the school district that the interpreter might be good enough for young children, but then was not able to interpret properly for an adult discussion, an intellectual level, something that's a bit more advanced terminology or different type of vocabulary, rather than what's used in a discussion or in a classroom with a child. So you could give feedback saying that you realize that it is not effective communication using the school interpreter. It doesn't meet the level required for effective communication. That is the terminology that you want to use. You want to emphasize the communication, the effective communication is not possible via the school's interpreter because of the level of language that they're using is lower than expected. I see in the chat some have sent information for advocacy letters. Here's the link. Multiple links. So the court is open to the public, and I just want to show up as a nosy person to see the court. Can I request an interpreter for open court? That's a good summary of this discussion. My answer is try it. Go ahead and try. See if you can get an interpreter. But the court case, if it does not involve a deaf person, you have to have a reason for needing an interpreter in the court case. You have to be able to justify the need for an interpreter. It's kind of difficult, but again, I'll just say try. Just go ahead and try and see what happens. An example is maybe it could be related, you might be related to the person who's being charged. You might be a relative, a family member, a parent, a cousin, whatever it may be. And you may have your own reason, you know, and they may provide you an interpreter, but just don't show up to court all day, every day, just to watch a case for no reason and watch court case after court case after court case. They're not going to agree with your demands at that point. 1% agree, da, da, da. Somebody asked about closed caption during court proceeding. Yes, we are seeing this more and more. The technology is improving in the court system, and they already have the stenographer taking notes. So it can be automatically applied to the caption. There's no audio, it's quiet. It doesn't disturb the audience. People can watch and read quietly. And I have seen that more and more. I've attended to a conference, and they have a situation in court where a person is sitting in jail because they have been they're sitting in jail for their case and they may not be on location when the court. So instead of having the two people in the same place facing each other, that's kind of the way things have been done with the old technology is actually changing. They can have a person there remotely. So as far as accessibility, accessibility has to be addressed. So whenever they tell the court, you know, they're calling a certain person, they may need to have captioning or VRS available. But people are opening the discussion as far as that ideas. It's being looked at a national level in the court system and the court call. But yeah, technology is changing. People are trying to catch up with it. You know what? I think I'm going to need to call it and thank all of you. I also thank my interpreters and the Louisiana Commission for the Deaf staff who have, and the community members, everyone in the community. I can see that everyone wants to make a difference in the life of deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind people, people with low vision, and so forth. We're not all the same. There's variety in the group. That is the point of my message today. Hi, Vanessa. I see Vanessa here. This is Vanessa speaking. Yes, yes. Hi. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for your presentation today. It was very, very informative, and you asked us good questions, thought-provoking questions. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to join us. And now, Paul, I believe we have your contact information on your next slide, if I'm correct. So if anybody would like to contact Paul, you can reach out to him here. And I also would like to add that for those of you who are interpreters and who would like to obtain CEUs for this session, be sure to take a look at the link. There's an evaluation form that you have to fill out. It is due by Monday. So please take care of that for us by Monday. If you have any kind of questions, you're free to reach out to the Louisiana Commission for the Deaf. Again, thank you all of you for joining today, and we appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your day. And this is Paul Singleton speaking. Thank you, everyone, and take care.